Hello, I'm Connor McCormick, and today I'll be talking about pythons in the Everglades. Now, when a lot of people want to go vacationing in the Everglades, they normally bring a pretty small packing list: spare clothes, a tent, water, and food. However, due to some new unexpected guests, there's a new item on the packing list: snake repellent. In the Everglades and in southern Florida in general, there is now a multitude of new invasive snake species that are causing a complete havoc of the ecosystem in those areas. These include the Burmese, North and South African, and scrub python, as well as the yellow, green, Benny, and the Shawnee's anaconda, and finally the boa constrictors. Now, these are invasive snake species, meaning they are not naturally found in Florida. And again, they're just causing complete havoc to the ecosystem and the wildlife that live in these ecosystems. So we're going to be talking about how they came to be in these areas, and the damage they're causing, how they're adapting, and what programs are in place to curb this problem. Like I said before, pythons, boas, and anacondas are considered invasive species in Florida. They're not naturally found here, but they're put in here through artificial means that we'll get into later. In the 1970s, when we first started seeing these snakes, they numbered in very few numbers. However, they were very quick to reproduce and spread to other parts of southern Florida. This is very important to me. I'm a Florida native, and I've seen these snakes. They range from 4 feet to 12 feet, and you will not see these snakes until you step on them, and by that point, it's too late. This is also important to everyone else because these snakes are learning to adapt to new environments. So we don't stop them here in Florida, they could potentially spread to other states. So let's find out about these origins on these snakes. Like I said before, these snakes started getting found in Florida in the 1970s due to the exotic pet trade. According to an article by WSUF Public Media by Kearney B. These snakes are normally found in Thailand and Myanmar. A lot of these snakes are coming into the environment due to neglectful and accidental releases. A lot of the pet owners were more accustomed to North American snakes, which are smaller in comparison to the southern eastern snakes. So a lot of them couldn't handle dealing with a bigger pet, so they released it carelessly into the wild, or these snakes just broke out of their habitat and went into the wild, and it's just completely causing mayhem in the ecosystem. A more recent example of this was in 2021, an article by Adriana Barcilio. There was a Central American milk snake found in a South Florida park. This snake was found out to be a pet due to its docile demeanor, meaning that it was domesticated. This was an example of someone just throwing their pet into the wild. Luckily it was caught, but it could have potentially caused more damage had it not been caught. And because of all this, breeding and selling a wide variety of snakes and lizards is now illegal due to the damage that they're causing outside of their habitats and in the wild. While these snakes are not native to Florida, they are learning to survive and adapt. Pythons, boas, and anacondas, they are nocturnal, meaning they do most of their activity in the night. They're also infrequent eaters, meaning they eat whenever they can. There's no set schedule for them. And finally, they're largely dormant. They do not move around very much. These three factors put together makes it very difficult for people to see these snakes, and if we can't see them, they can't get caught. An example of these snakes adapting was there was a cold snap, and basically means a large drop in temperature. A lot of the snakes died. However, the ones that are able to give birth to offspring are now seeing an adaptation to the cold. These snakes, they prey on 76 different species of prey, according to an article from WSUF Public Media. These can vary from domesticated goats, crows, vultures, all the way up to alligators. Because these are invasive snakes, there's no natural predator to curb the population growth of these snakes, so they just continue to eat without ever really going down in numbers, so it's just a continually growing problem. Because of all this, according to ESA Journal, an article by Ian Bartozek, there is a major decline in meso-mammal populations. The marsh rabbit has seen a 77% decrease in its population, largely due to these invasive snakes. So onto their diet. This was a picture I found on the South Florida Water Management District website. And basically, this one python will consume the same amount of diet that all of these animals do put together. And this only takes about 5 to 7 years, and by then, this snake is about 13 feet. So all these animals eat the same amount as this python. Now, if no natural predator is really throwing the food chain out of balance, and the ecosystem is just largely losing a lot of animals because of it. However, it's not all horrible. There are programs and incentives in place to hopefully curb this problem. The South Florida Water Management District has a python elimination program in place. Basically, it's a 10-day hunting event which has up to 50 participants. These participants get paid $13 to $18 an hour, depending on the area they're in, to hunt pythons. They get $50 for any python that's 4 foot, and then they get 25 feet for each additional foot over 4 foot that they get. And finally, they get $200 for finding an active nest with eggs. Overall, this program has resulted in 7,000 snakes being captured and humanely euthanized. Another option is tracking collars on prey. So for larger animals like possums and armadillos, scientists will put a tracking collar on them. So when a larger snake comes up and eats them, the collar will stay on the snake, and the snake can be tracked usually to its nest, where then they can humanely euthanize the snake and the nest before any of the eggs hatch. Another option is training sniffing dogs. However, this is not a preferred method, as there are more technical methods and less dangerous to the dogs involved. Finally, another possibility is genetic biocontrol. Basically, biologists will hopefully be able to alter the DNA of these snakes where the females become sterile and cannot reproduce, or majority of the population becomes male and again cannot reproduce, causing hopefully the population to tamper out after a certain amount of years. And a more practical approach is common sense pet ownership. Basically, if you have an exotic snake and you realize you cannot take care of it, do not throw it into the wild. Take it to your local vet or your local shelter to prevent this from continuously happening needlessly. In conclusion, we talked about how invasive snakes are a growing and very real threat to southern Florida. We talked about their origins and the damage they're causing, how they're adapting to the environment, and we also talked about how there are programs and incentives in place to hopefully curb this problem. This is a big issue because you never know, that one snake you had when you were maybe 12, when it was about like 2 feet, you throw it out in the wild, and you never know, 3 years later it might be a 14-foot monster and you might just step on it. So hopefully people learn to be responsible with their pets, and hopefully we see this problem solve itself in Florida and not the rest of the country.